Good afternoon. My name is Trish Christensen. I'm the president and CEO of the Modesto Chamber of Commerce. Nice to have you all with us today. We do know a few people will be joining a little late, so just know that people will come on little by little. In the room, we'll start there. Over on my left, if you guys would just say your name and who you're with.
Chad Tinkin, Interim Assistant General Manager of Water Operations for Modesto Irrigation District.
Can you hear him? Was that loud enough? Yes, no, maybe? Awesome, thank you.
Good
And
afternoon, Dana Ferreira, regulatory analyst with MID.
thank you, and
Sabrina Gonzalez Fuel, membership coordinator here at the chamber.
thank you. And John, could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm John Mensinger, American Lumber Company and Director, Division 2, Modesto Irrigation District.
Thank you. Amy, I saw you just jumped in. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Amy Collier-Carroll, Director of Legislative Affairs and Communications for Stanislaus County.
Thank you. And Mike?
Mike Dunbar, representing Assemblyman Adam Gray.
Thank you. And Bill? Unmute.
Yeah. Hey, Bill Lyons, former MID director quite a while ago and representing Mapes Ranch.
Thank you. With that, help me watch for others that join. Oh, someone's coming in, I think. Hi. Hi. We're just doing simple introductions right now. Could you just say who you are?
Yeah, Eric with Oakville Irrigation District, Eric Foreman.
Hi, and come on in. When you're presenting, it'll be on the side of the room. So if you want to take a seat over in here anywhere, you're welcome to do so.
Just FYI, those are on camera. Yes.
Someone else pop in. Yeah. Nazarette, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay, hold on, let me get my headphones.
there you go. I got it now. What's your statement? You just introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Meseret Girmay. I'm the Senior Employment Specialist at the International Rescue Committee based in Turlock, Modesto.
Thank you. And we had two gentlemen just walk in. Could you just say who you are and who you're with, please?
Yeah, Josh Weimer, Turlock Irrigation District. Michael Cook, Turlock Irrigation District.
Thank you. We will run, let me put the minute, oh, you have some minutes up, please. We're gonna go ahead and put the minutes up, and if you've had a chance to look at them, they were emailed out. We'll take a motion to approve those. From anyone who was here, present, and has read the minutes. Dana, were you on?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. And a second. John, I believe you were present. Would you like to second that?
I will be happy to second it, except I can't read the entire minutes because they're, yeah, that's better. Okay, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, back to the agenda, please. And we will go ahead and start with reports. All good. The guests are trying to break the new furniture here, so. I think we will start with Mike. Do you have a report to offer today? Mike with Adam Gray's office, would you like to offer a report?
Actually, I was not prepared to offer a report. I'm simply lurking or listening to the water information. I will say that we continue to be deeply interested in the water situation here, as everyone is.
Thank you, sir. Amy, I think you would be next. Do you have anything you'd like to offer today?
It's actually been pretty quiet at the county, I would say. We've had a couple of weeks with no board meetings, but we are watching closely to track the transmission rates and hopefully lift the public health order around masking. We also have some new information on our website around drought resources and information for people who have been impacted by the drought. So I thought I would mention that here. If you go to stancounty.com, there's a story on the homepage of our website related to that. And then I wanted to also mention that our redistricting effort is still underway. We are still seeking public input and support. And we have a couple of public hearings coming up with proposed maps. So take a look at our website for that as well. And you can just use the search bar to find the redistricting information. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I think we've covered everyone who's present. All right, then with that, I think we can go into reports. If you'd like to, we'll go ahead and stop screen sharing. Give us a second to pull the screen share down. Your right spot. You can come towards the table just a little bit. That just ensures they can hear you a little better. And whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Cook. I'm Director of Water Resources and Regulatory Affairs for the Turlock Irrigation District. My main responsibilities with the district are relicensing of Don Pedro through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, and also compliance with the state somewhat new groundwater legislation, SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So I'm going to tag team with my counterpart from Modesto Irrigation District to talk about some of the issues we're dealing with on surface water, groundwater, and various other things affecting the region right now. And then, obviously questions are always welcome. So under the Federal Power Act, any hydroelectric generating facility is required to obtain a license from the federal government. As I mentioned, FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is the federal agency that licenses projects like Don Pedro. And Don Pedro got its initial authorization back in 1966. That license expired in 2016, so it's a 50-year license. It's now expired. We get annual approvals, and so we can continue under our current regulations until we get our new license. So the districts have gone through what's called an integrated licensing process. It started about 2010, 2011. So we've been at this for over a decade now, trying to get this new license. And so FERC acts as a clearinghouse for all state and federal agencies, as well as various affected parties, conservation groups. And they kind of are the master of the licensing process. So everything goes from FERC, one agency, helps us move a little bit more efficiently. The main focus, quite frankly, of the licensing effort is improving the fishery, the salmon fishery on the Tuolumne. It's been in decline for a number of years, but that decline has accelerated since the early 2000s. The district's approach is to work on developing science to inform and develop the relicensing process, or form and guide the relicensing process. Unfortunately, there's sometimes a lack of data of what's happening on the Tuolumne. So studies from other regions get brought in and say, hey, this is working in Oregon, this is working in Montana, maybe you should do this on the Tuolumne. So the districts have really focused on Tuolumne specific science to help guide and direct the licensing process. It's been quite a process. We spent tens of millions of dollars over the last few years. I've worked on various studies, I think over 20 studies on various fisheries and biological and environmental issues. And our work, however, has been well received by FERC. And in 2020, they approved what's called our final environmental impact statement, or FEIS. So many of you work in California, you've heard of CEQA and EIRs. This is a federal process subject to NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. And through that, we have to get an environmental impact statement, which we've done, and it's been very positive for the district. The FEIS focuses on the adaptive management of the river using more water, for habitat restoration, and strategically timed water releases and science to encourage and increase salmon returns. So we'll leave with the idea that MID and TID have been very good stewards of the Tuolumne for over 100 years. And along with our partner in the city and county of San Francisco, we've invested heavily in studying and understanding the Tuolumne species and other things that rely on it, like our industries, like our people, like our economy. And we've developed a realistic and sustainable management plan for the Tuolumne, which we think is the best way to move forward. Now, the State Water Board, the California State Water Board, and some conservation groups are pushing back. They don't like the work we've done. They don't like the findings that FERC has made in the environmental impact statement. So we have two issues yet to resolve, and once we resolve those, we can get a new license. We have Federal Endangered Species Act consultation with National Marine Fisheries. That's kind of at a standstill right now, and hopefully we can move forward on that. But that's an outstanding item. And also the State Water Board is pushing back on water quality issues, basically trying to find a way to implement the substitute environmental document and Bay Delta plan update we did 3 years ago that is still in litigation. So kind of with that, that segues into what Chad's going to talk about right now is the Bay Delta plan update of 2018. I think maybe you remember the rallies at the Capitol and the signs that MID and TID put together for the campaign to push against that new state legislation. So I hand it over to Chad.
Thanks, Michael. So I'm Chad Tinkin. I'm the Interim Assistant General Manager of Water Operations at Modesto Irrigation District. And as Michael noted, State Water Board is at the end of 2018 adopted the Bay Delta Plan, which is supposed to send more water into the Bay Delta by demanding more flows from the San Joaquin tributaries, which of course are the Merced River, the Stanislaus River, and the Tuolumne River. On the Tuolumne River, that means 40% unimpaired flow, which in comparison to what we've seen historically, which was about 20%, it's double. And so the state's flow proposal would redirect waters away from our communities without any recognizable benefits, really, to the salmon population. Their plan contemplates an increase of about 1,100 fish, and that's on the Tuolumne, Stanislaus, and Merced River combined. So the impacts to our local community, of course, are significant, and the farm impacts are potentially devastating. To give you an idea, we can look back at MID allocations during the last drought. In 2013, our farmers received 34 inches of water. Had the Bay Delta plan been in place, they would have received 16 inches of water. In 2014, the following year, our farmers received, I believe it was 20 inches of water. Under the Bay Delta plan, it would have been 0. And similarly, in 2015, instead of 18 inches, they would have received 0. So farmers in both MID and TID would have received no surface water in 2015 under the Bay Delta plan. Now, the city of Modesto receives the same water allocation as MID's ag customers, and therefore any reduction to MID's surface water allocation would have also been felt by the city of Modesto citizens and water users. There are also equivalent impacts to the city and county of San Francisco and their 2.6 million water users and customers. And so now that's just direct water supply impacts. On top of that, there would have been $170 million of farm gate revenue lost. And for the businessmen and women attending today, more than $1.6 billion in economic output lost, over $300 million of labor income lost, and 6,500 jobs lost. So what are we doing to protect our community? Well, following their adoption, we filed suit in early 2019 along with dozens of others, and we continue to fight the Bay Delta plan in state court. It's taken 2 years for the state to prepare the public record, and we're now going through that to ensure that it's accurate and complete. And so that's really where we stand today. And the districts continue to fight this unbalanced and ineffective plan and advocate for a comprehensive science-based plan, which I believe Michael's going to speak about now.
Thank you, Chad. So one of the alternatives to the implementation of the Bay Delta plan is entering into what's called a voluntary agreement with the state of California, whereby we develop a package of proposals, put them in an agreement that's an alternative or a substitute for what they're trying to do through the Bay Delta plan. And so we've been working on this for about 3 years with them through negotiations. We proposed a package of solutions that does include more water and particularly timely water flows, the significant investments in habitat restoration, over $100 million, and additional science investigations, analysis, and governance solutions that we feel is a real robust solution to improving the Tuolumne fishery rather than just putting more water down the river and hoping for the best, which is effectively what the state's proposed as part of the Bay Delta plan. So again, rather than just a flow-only approach, we've come up with a robust solution. The districts are very committed to this comprehensive approach, and we've been at the table for more than 3 years now. Unfortunately, the state keeps coming in and out of negotiations as they see fit. Quite frankly, I think initially they were trying to outweight the Trump administration and get a new administration which would be more favorable in terms of how they view the operations in the Delta. Then we had COVID, that put a chilling impact on things. And now we have the drought, which has preoccupied the State Water Board and various state agencies. So whenever we get close to solutions, it seems something happens and they step back from negotiations. But again, I think the districts have done a good job putting together a proposal to the state, which is an alternative to the Bay Delta plan update, which will work well to, again, protect the resources for our region, but also invest and improve the environmental solutions in the Tuolumne River. So with that, we kind of covered the main issues we're dealing with right now with surface water. I'll touch on the drought and the drought regulations at the end. One of the big issues that we're dealing with right now, both in the Modesto and Turlock areas, is implementing the Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan, which was passed by the state legislature Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which was passed by the state in 2014. And we have to do two things as part of that: manage groundwater sustainably, so we can't overdraft groundwater as we've done often in the past. And the use of groundwater cannot have undesirable results. And the state lists a litany of what they call deadly sins, things you can't do as part of using groundwater. So it's like keeping groundwater levels at a certain level, not reducing groundwater storage, not impacting groundwater quality, not impacting surface water, not impacting groundwater dependent ecosystems. There's a whole host of things you have to do. And we have to reach sustainability in 20 years. Our plan is due end of January of next year. And right now we are working the Turlock Basin with what we call basically new levels of government. So what we call groundwater sustainability agencies who are tasked with putting together a groundwater sustainability plan. So you have these agencies working together to develop a plan. In the Turlock, we have two agencies: the West Turlock GSA, Sustainability Agency, and the East Turlock GSA. We couldn't come up with a better description, so we're just the West and the East, and kind of like West Side Story a little bit. The West Turlock GSA is really defined by the Turlock Irrigation District boundaries, and in our GSA we have all of the cities and small communities. So South Modesto, Ceres, Turlock, Houston. Don't forget some of the Denair and Keys and Billmar. Other small communities. So the urban and the ag in the west side, and the east side is just the people who pump only. So that's the people kind of generally east of Hickman Road, you know that part of the world very well, and around Turlock Lake and south down to the Merced River. So we've got in our area 2 counties, San Luis County and Merced County, 2 GSAs, and a host of other public water agencies working together to put our plan together. So in our part of the world, our main issue is over pumping on the east side. So the East Turlock folks do not have access to surface water. They're groundwater dependent only. And this has resulted in a drawdown of groundwater levels known as a cone of depression. And basically what we're finding is that practice as it is right now can't continue if we are to be sustainable as required by the state law. So working on a plan to address that over time. And with the East Turlock's main focus is how do they avoid what's called demand management, to cut back some pumping, which other parts of the state have had to do. So we're working on projects and programs and other ways to minimize the impact of demand management on the East Turlock. We're finishing up our plan over the next couple of months, and they'll be out, parts of it are out for public review, but the whole document will be out in November. And so then the State Department of Water Resources has about 18 to 24 months to look at our plan and grade it and let us know if we need any changes. And so we'll know in the middle to late 2023 whether they are okay with our plan and our approach. So that's what's going on in the Turlock Subbasin, which is basically the Tuolumne River down to the Merced River. I hand over to Chad to talk about groundwater issues in the Modesto Subbasin.
So as Michael covered, a lot of the things that are pretty much everything that applies to the Turlock GSAs apply to Modesto, right? It's all under the same Groundwater Sustainability Act. The Modesto Subbasin is governed by STRPA, which stands for the Stanislaus and Tuolumne Rivers Groundwater Basin Association. Kind of an unfortunate acronym. It's a tough one. And if you tune in, you'll get to hear Eric with his introduction. That's kind of a little bit long, but because of that. So which consists of all of the different water purveyors within the basin, the city of Waterford, city of Riverbank, Oakdale, city of Modesto, Oakdale Irrigation District, Modesto Irrigation District, and Stanislaus County. 3 out of those 4 cities rely solely on groundwater for their water supply. And as previously noted, the city of Modesto receives treated surface water from MID, which accounts for about half of their water supply. Our groundwater sustainability plan is due in January 2022, as Michael noted. And so we're really coming into the home stretch on that plan. We also intend to have a draft out in early November for public review and comments. So keep an eye out for that. So our GSA meets the second Wednesday of every month. The discussions are very interactive, as Director Mensinger knows. He participates in those. You can go to strgba.org for information. You can sign up for regular updates, review draft chapters of the GSP as they're released, as well as review minutes from past meetings. And you can also follow them on Facebook and Twitter too. Through modeling, we recently talked about projects. We went over the modeling that's done with those projects being in place at our last meeting. And the good news is that it does look like we potentially have the water to bring our basin into sustainability. But there's a lot of work to do to get there. So with that, I can hand it over to Michael and we'll talk a little bit more about drought.
Chad, so to finish up on the drought, which is kind of one of the things that really had to focus on the last year or so. So this year is the 4th driest on record in terms of precipitation. Don Pedro as of today is at 49% capacity. The historic average at this time of year is usually 74%. So we're way below our historic average, but compared to other reservoirs around the state, most of them are around about 20 to 25%. So Don Pedro is in much better shape than most reservoirs around the state. So why is that, right? And it's really because of good proactive management by the boards at MID and TID, who have planned and looked at what was coming into the future and started to cut back supply to our growers quickly and proactively. It's been a cause of interest and frustration for some of us at the districts. The states talked about Shasta and Oroville and how the inflow wasn't what they expected and the water just flowed into the ground and the snow just disappeared. Well, they have the same forecasting tools that we do. They have the same data available to them that we do. We were able to project our water supply is almost spot on. So where they lost, I can't remember the numbers, at 400,000, 600,000 acre feet, we don't know. Other than it doesn't sound right to us based on the information they have, but that's their story and they're sticking to it. But again, kudos to the boards in our region for being very proactive in how to manage our supplies and looking for the long term rather than just the year by year thing. So, so our district invested a great deal in our forecasting resources and efforts, aerial snow observatory and other things. We communicate early and often amongst ourselves and with our growers about what's going on. And as I mentioned, we started cutting back last year, knowing this year it could be just as bad, if not worse. And again, we're starting to plan already for next year. Our goal as a district is to always maintain enough water for next year's fish year's flow. So we always put the fish first in our region because that's we have to comply with our regulations to operate on Pedro. And so you won't see the fish problems you've seen on the Russian River and other places where they kind of put the fish last and then ask for forgiveness. So again, we're trying to avoid that bad publicity and operate our reservoirs in a responsible manner. As you may know, in early August, the State Water Board adopted emergency regulations for the Delta. The purpose of the Delta was, purpose of the regulations were, purposes were basically due to the drought, low water conditions. They're seeing some low water levels and quality issues in the Delta, so implemented their curtailment order. The goal was to protect drinking water supplies in the Delta and for Delta exporters, prevent salinity intrusion into the Delta, and minimize impacts of fisheries in the environment. And so on August 20th, 4,500 water rights holders, including TID and MID, received notices of curtailment orders, and it affects TID's pre and post 1914 water rights. So what does that mean? It means that whatever flows into the Tuolumne, what's called the full natural flow, has to stay in the Tuolumne and it cannot be diverted in storage or used for beneficial use. However, we're allowed to continue to divert from storage, so the water we've already stored we can divert. So the actual impact to our growers in this irrigation season has been zero. So we have, again, as I said, 49% full in Don Pedro. We're using that water to keep our growers whole. And so the impact of the curtailment order on our growers this year has had no impact. The other thing you have to understand too is we have to release a certain volume of water every day to the Tuolumne to protect the fishery. Right now, our fishery releases are about 125 cubic feet per second. This weekend, they're up to 150, and that's our minimum flow for the winter. Full natural flow, so water runoff in the Tuolumne right now from the mountains is about 60, 62 cubic feet per second. So we're already releasing twice as much water as is coming in from the mountains. So again, the curtailment order is not affecting us. However, our concern is we don't understand the state's methodology that they've developed for the curtailment orders. We are very concerned that as rain starts to occur, we want to capture that, put that water in storage to get ready for next year, as I mentioned. If they keep these curtailment orders in place, that means that water will just flow through Don Pedro and downstream into the Delta. And we feel that with the water rights we have, we should not be curtailed and should be able to divert and store that water for next year as we've always done. So watch this space. We are litigating the issues, so we're taking the state to court along with our partners in San Joaquin, so Oakville, South San Joaquin, Modesto, and Turlock. I think Merced has a case too, where we're litigating over the emergency regulation. We've also had the state ask them to reconsider how the curtailment orders is applied to the Tuolumne based on our priority right. So we're fighting that as best we can. Luckily, there hasn't been significant precipitation since the curtailment orders have gone into effect, but we are concerned one or two big storms come in, there's more flow in the Tuolumne, and we hope to be able to capture that in Don Pedro. Again, so the litigation is whether the state has the legal authority and justification for the curtailment order. They did lose a similar case in 2015. And over time, the only solution in California, as we've seen things change, is more storage, both below ground. So some things we're working on with Sigma, is to use our areas below ground, so groundwater storage to improve supply, and also how do we improve surface water storage. And I know that's always a difficult subject with New Melones being the last reservoir constructed in California, but as things are changing, we really have to focus our efforts on maximizing storage of water when it's available to get us through these difficult times that seem to come more often and more frequently. So with that, I will leave it and have Chad close it up for us.
Well, as you can see, there are a number of water issues affecting our local community right now, and we're doing our best to keep you informed. In addition to presentations like these, you can go to the different districts or the district's websites, and where we maintain up-to-date information on all of our media outlets. You can visit the district, or you can also go to our social media channels for more information. TID has podcasts that I believe are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. I encourage you to check out our videos on the MID website, where you can find information about relicensing, voluntary agreements, the Bay Delta Plan. And we've also produced a documentary called Until the Last Drop. That's available on MID's website, YouTube, and also Amazon Prime. And it showcases all that Michael and I have talked about today through the voices of scientists, farmers, conservationists, elected officials, and so on. And in closing, I wanted to take an opportunity to just boast about my colleagues who work tirelessly on these efforts: Michael, Josh, Dana, Eric, and everyone else that works on this. And wanted to recognize the TID and MID boards of directors for the unwavering commitment to these issues and to persistently advocating for our customers and constituents. With that.
Thank you. You guys are up.
Yeah, want me to get up there?
Yes, please.
I don't really have
Yes,
any
please,
formal
on camera.
presentation.
So when you're gonna stand pretty much where those gentlemen were, and the microphone is in this right here, so you're projecting towards us.
All right. Well, thanks for that formal presentation, guys. I didn't have enough notice to really provide anything or put anything formal together. Yeah, I know. So a lot of what applies at MID and TID applies to OYD. The SED is obviously an issue for us, and we are together and independently kind of trying to attack that. It has less impact on the stand only because the Stanislaus River already runs at about 28 to 32% of the full natural flow, and they want to go up to 40. However, our operation, we are trying to work through a plan that actually optimizes the storage in the reservoir for water to maximize the amount of water we have for the river each and every year, rather than just not acting as if we don't have a reservoir in place to do that. So we've got an alternative plan. We're trying to go through some voluntary agreements, but it doesn't appear that they're listening or really focusing on those. We were proposing to do habitat projects, so that would allow spawning under even low flows in the river. It would also decrease predation on the river, which we know from our science that is a big problem. Predation is a big problem. They don't want to accept that fact. Yeah, we have an alternative flow plan to maintain the water in the reservoir each and every year. Under their plan, our model shows that the reservoir would actually go dry every 5 years, and that's a big problem. So we're a little bit different than the Tuolumne in that on the Stanislaus River, we had old Melones, and the federal government built new Melones. So we don't have carryover storage. Instead, we have an 88 agreement where we negotiated the first 600,000 acre feet of inflow into the New Melones Reservoir each and every year. So hence the reason that we sell the water, because if we don't sell the water, we don't utilize all of our water each and every year, then they get it for free, and they're motivated to do that. So we are constantly battling that and trying to put all of our water to use. This year we had no restrictions, no allotments, no cap on deliveries. Going into next year, the restrictions to divert water to storage is concerning. It's too early to tell how that's going to affect us. our position is that the water that goes down the river is going to be the bureaus, and there's going to be inflow coming into the reservoir, and we're going to continue to be able to divert that because our water is first, and they're the junior water right holder on the river. So it's really it's too early to tell how that's going to impact us. Sigma, we're part of the same group, the Modesto Basin, as Chad mentioned. So we're working through that. We've got a GSP that's due in January 2022. So that's our big focus. The project's management actions right now. We've worked through that. That is a positive thing. But we can hopefully close the deficit, and we'll see. The non-district east is where we're having our overdraft. So those are the primary parties that need to fund and implement the projects, and that's where the projects need to occur to put the water where the overdraft is occurring. Maloney's right now is 30% of capacity currently. We need about 146% of normal precipitation to have a normal runoff year. So that's a little scary. We're going to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Like I said, we're going to rely on our 88 agreement to get us through next year. And we've got a water shortage plan in place. We've done a lot of improvements over the years to improve our efficiency. So we are able to sustain ourselves and provide a high quality and high surety of allotment to our growers. So, yeah.
Nice, thank you.
I'll answer questions.
Yeah, we'll open it up. Let me unzoom this a little bit. It's a small enough group. I think if you would like to just unmute and pose your questions, feel free to do so. And Mike, you could introduce yourself if you're able to. I saw Michael also popped on and had to go.
Hello, I'm Mike Meridian. I'm on the chamber board, and I'm the vice chair for external affairs and the water committee. And so one of the questions I have for all of you to answer, what do you need from the Modesto chamber, and what do you need from the business community in the greater area? And you could start with TID, OID, or MID.
I really appreciate that. I know in the past you've been great partners with us as we've lobbied the state legislatures, the state legislature, in our various campaigns. I think we'll keep you posted. We do appreciate the support because it's not just an issue of the districts, it's the economy of the region, and it's not just growers, it's our food processors, it's our equipment suppliers, it's everything that goes with that. We're still, a significantly ag-based economy, and sometimes the state doesn't quite understand it. They just see almond trees or dairy, and they think that's as far as the economy goes here. So I appreciate your willingness to help us out. I think as we go forward on things like voluntary agreements with the new FERC license, even with Sigma, there's a real important relationship there between business and the districts and the ag community that we can all tap into. And so both our districts, MID and TID, have external affairs department. They will reach out as needed. If we need legislation, we'll look for people and again get your support. So again, thank you for that. I don't know if we're on the process right now where we need your help right now, but please be on standby and we'll reach out to you as needed.
MID or OID?
I don't really have much to add. Michael covered it really well, but staying diligent and making sure that the message doesn't get diluted or lost is a big help. And the businesses within the city of Modesto are a great outlet for doing that. So as Michael mentioned, when the timing is right, or as we do rev up our campaigns, your help with regard to that will be much appreciated and go a long way.
I'd like to address this issue a little bit. Basically, the problem we have is that the elites in Sacramento, the water board people, are very left-wing. They're very pro-environment. They're anti-farming. And as a result, they're not very kind to us. And having said all that, what I think was probably not emphasized enough in the presentation today is just what a regulatory and legal nightmare this is. In other words, the state frankly does not have all the tools to properly steal our water as much as they'd like to. And one thing that is very confusing on the Tuolumne is it's one thing for the state to say, well, the flows are going to be 30 to 50%, but it's a separate process to decide which water rights holders contribute that 30 to 50%. So there is a formula if flows are required by the federal license. That requires San Francisco to provide over 50% of the flows. So they are disproportionately impacted. And so anyway, we are vigorously protecting our legal rights. And the reason voluntary agreements make sense is because we're going to be in court for 5, 10, or 15 years on this. And there's no certainty on either side what's going to happen. So we could lose big, we could lose small, we could win big. We don't know. And in fact, the irony is right now, there's a court case which basically says that the state has waived their authority to require flows through the relicensing process. Now, we may not win that court case, but we've got a shot at it. And until we know, nobody really knows what's going on. And that will probably be decided in 6 to 8 months. So it's a very, very confusing picture. And I just want to say that, gosh, it's probably 2 or 3 years ago now, we had a big rally. We encouraged citizens from our region to go up to the Capitol and protest, make their voice heard. They did a great job. The response from the region was fabulous. I'd like to commend our local political leaders are terrific. So people like Adam Gray, Heath Flora, these people are on our side and they work tirelessly on our behalf, but they're outnumbered by the wrong-thinking legislators in Sacramento. So anyway, it's a very complicated picture, unfortunately. But so right now, Michael, to answer your question, I don't know that there's much you can do other than to stay well informed. And all I can say is that when we're looking for community help, we'll ask for it. But it's very frustrating because our voice is not heard as loudly as it should be in Sacramento.
Thank you, John.
Could I jump in? This is Bill Lyons.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to support John Minsinger's comments, and he's of the same mindset I am regarding some of the state issues. I'd like to personally thank Eric and Mike and Chad, MID, TID, and OID, for really representing our area at the state. I had the opportunity to be up there when I saw all three organizations really step up and try to protect our area. I'd like to concentrate a couple comments and questions on the Sigma area and really direct them to the group. I mean, I've tried to follow it from on the outside, and it appears that there's been a recommendation of a 58% reduction on the east side when it comes to pumping. And there's been some ideas brought forth about, somewhere between $28,000 to $60,000 or 60,000 acre feet to be transferred to the east side. I have some real concerns about that. If we are going to transfer water, I'd like to know what OID, MID, and TID's position is. One, on the availability of that water, and also their thoughts about what that market rate should be for that value of that water, because in a sense, whatever we charge those individuals helps all three of our districts and all three of our customers. So that's one. And then two, on Sigma, is I've looked at some of the proposed projects and the infrastructure and administration and operation of Sigma. Who's going to pay for those costs? Because it looks like to me that the real issue is located primarily in just one area of our basin. So if the three representatives could address that, I'd sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, let me be so rude as to interrupt the three representatives and maybe try to take them off the political hook, because Bill, you're bringing up excellent questions. And just so everybody understands better, basically in our basin, the biggest negative drawdown of groundwater are almond orchards on the eastern side of the county. And same issue in the Turlock Basin, but it's definitely in the Modesto Basin. And as Bill points out, if nothing is done, that cannot continue. In other words, the people that are pumping up there will have to be forced to reduce their pumping to a level that is sustainable. But of course, there are things we can do to try to help them out. And one thing is to provide them surface water when we have extra water. Now, are we going to have extra water? Well, that depends on the weather, and it depends on what the state board does. You know, we just talked about all the uncertainty relating to the state's desire to take a bunch of our water. If the state were to succeed in that, then we would probably not be able to supply very much to the eastern foothills. So that would be a different ballgame. So, and then Bill also brought up, so I should explain, I've been going to the STRGBA meetings. I think I'm familiar with the issues. The plan has not yet been adopted, so it is still subject to discussion. So projects have been created to help the people out on the east side towards sustainability. The problem, as Bill mentioned, is some of those programs are not very well defined. So for instance, the county has programs to take floodwaters from the Tuolumne and Dry Creek and recharge the groundwater basin. But when you ask for any details of the plans, they're not yet available. So that's an uncertainty. And as far as the price, Bill's right about that. That's a very interesting subject, is what would be the price of any water transferred? And that would be subject to negotiation. But the bottom line is that if OID is going to sell water, the OID board, with the help of their staff, is going to set the price. Likewise, if MID is going to sell water, the board will make the final determination as to what that price will be. And so, so there are a lot of moving parts. We don't know what's going to happen, but Bill is right to have all these concerns. Now I'll let the professionals answer.
Yeah, I can start with OID. So yeah, your first question about with that water, how, do we have that water available? We have actually, well, so again, I should go back to the Stanislaus River and OID's water right is a little bit different the way it works, just because we're the feds on the river. So if we don't use that full 600,000 acre feet that we get, which half of that is actually OID's, the other half is South and Keene irrigation districts. But if we don't use that full 600,000 acre feet of inflow, then we don't get it. We start over every single year, so we don't get any carryover. So we leave water on the table each and every year. On an average, it's about 100,000 acre feet. So together. So we have made that water. We've been doing out of district water sales for years. We've made that water available to them at a higher rate than everybody's paying in district. This last year, for example, was $125 an acre foot. Everybody in district is paying roughly $3.50 an acre foot, $3.50 an acre foot. So significantly higher rate, and as it should be. But nobody's taking that water currently. So Sigma is going to be it's going to end up being the motivating factor for them, hopefully, to take that water. But we do have the water currently. As Director Menzinger pointed out, if this SED moves forward, then we will have the water available less often. In the plan, 20,000 acre feet of water is proposed to go to the out of district constituents around OID's service area. And that's a conceptual project, so there's no agreement, there are no terms, there's no infrastructure. Well, there's some infrastructure in place currently to those that are taking water now, but there would be significant infrastructure that would need to be put in place. And all of that cost, our thought is at least, it would be at the non-district east farmers' expense. But all those projects, they're conceptual. As Director Menzinger pointed out, there are not a lot of details on those projects, but they're going to need to move forward with those quickly if we're going to close the deficit and meet our goal of sustainability in the 20-year period. So they need to get those details ironed out and start putting some infrastructure in here the next 5 years, start taking water if we're going to do that. And if they don't, then our management action, yeah, like you mentioned, would be allocations, reductions in pumping, And yeah, roughly 50%. If you just cut back the pumping, the Modesto Basin, 50% of that area, their ground would go dry. And that would allow us to be sustainable in the Modesto Basin as well. So.
Eric, if I could just follow up with some of your statements. So you've said that the water's been offered at $150 an acre foot.
125 in previous years.
Okay, and they're not taking it. Yet I believe OID is selling water to other individuals or other districts downriver at a much higher price. How do you, if you're selling water for $300 or $350 an acre foot, I'm just curious how the board reacts when they have people that won't take it for $150.
Yeah, for 125. Yeah, you're right. In years when we have water available and commit and have a willing buyer, we are moving water down the river, and it's $200 to $300 an acre foot. Unfortunately, we've got the bureau that doesn't want. They're a huge roadblock, and if they can block that transfer any year they can, they will. I think that the board. I can't speak for the board, but they see that people are not willing to take it, and it's disappointing. But we've got the way that we fund improvements in our district is through water sales. So that can either be local out of district water sales, or that could be down the river, out of the area, San Luis Delta Mendota type of water sales. So we've got to figure that we've got about $3.5 million a year of capital improvements we want to do. If we don't have a water sale, then we don't do capital improvements. All that money is put right back into our infrastructure to help us be more efficient, cut down our water use in districts, be more resilient, to allow us to be more resilient in drought years. So I don't know what the price would ultimately be. I think that the reason that they haven't taken our water is because they don't want to pay $125 for our water when they can pump it out of the ground for $60. If they're told they can't pump it out of the ground, then they have no choice than to pay the higher dollar rate, right? Higher dollar amount. So I think that'll be the motivating factor for them. So yeah, things are going to change. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. Does that answer your question?
I think it's a great concept. I would imagine that the money that you bring back into the district not only helps on your infrastructure costs, but keeps your water rates as low as they are, which is a big pat on the back to OID.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that, I would expect that MID and TID will look at that type of example and that type of policy decision-making as they move forward, or at least I would hope they would as a constituent. Thank you.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add is that, a lot of those farmers are hesitant to put any kind of infrastructure in because there's no certainty for that water. It's just a year-to-year, on a year-to-year basis. So I think if we did some type of long-term contract with them, or even annexation, something like that, they would be willing to pay $125 and probably closer to $300 for certainty over a longer period. So we're going to explore options. I'm sure we'll talk about that. The board will talk about that moving forward here as now that the non-district east landowners know that there's kind of a time limit on when they need to act unless they want to dry up 50% of the ground. I think that those discussions will become a little more serious, and we'll get into those details.
Yeah, Sigma is really the backstop that changes their outlook, right? So I wanted to first off clarify the quantity of water that MID, or that one of the projects that MID participates in proposes. So one of the projects proposes 60,000 acre feet in only above normal and wet years. So those are years where there would be that amount of water available. And in other year types, we don't contemplate anything. So the model only looks at it that way. So when they state 28,000 acre feet a year, what they're doing is looking at over the 50-year baseline. that's what the 60,000 in those particular years results in. So on the average. And so I want to clarify that our board has taken no action with regards to the projects. They've been informed of them, but that's about it. So yeah, they are conceptual in nature. There's a lot of details to work out. This plan is really a starting point for us. Sigma is brand new. It was put into law in 2014. And there have, the critically overdrafted basins have had their plans in place for a little while now. Ours are coming in next, and so this is really it's unknown territory. So we're going into it with trying to maintain the amount of flexibility required to react to changing conditions. So that's really how we're looking at this. Once the plan is in place, we have to start implementing immediately. We will have an annual report due in April, and so we've got to hit the ground running. But we do have opportunities to add projects if we need to. So we may get into this and realize that what we planned either won't work due to timeline or price or whatever it might be. But our agencies will be able to react to that. Yeah, I think Bill, you had a second question, I think, that I don't think I acknowledged. What was that?
I actually, it's on the cost part of it, and it's actually, when Sigma does get implemented, there's going to be a tremendous ongoing cost of both assessing the program and managing it and monitoring it, and the administration and the infrastructure. And is someone who's not only in the ag business, but also has a number of commercial and industrial situations in the area. I just want to make sure that my tenants, our family, have a full understanding of what their portion of these costs will be. And, I see some pretty heavy costs coming down, and I would hope that the districts would say that the individuals who have created the problem, need to pay what it takes to handle the problem.
Yeah, I agree. It should be proportionate, I think, to the users, the heavy users, the ones that have created the problem. And I think that's our intent. And as far as cost for water, sent transferred to the non-district areas, that's something that will have to be undertaken in the future. Our boards of directors will look at them, and just as Aaron talked about.
Yeah, and the administrative costs, we're going to have to obviously all pitch in on that. The good news on that is that Modesto Subbasin, we've been doing this even before the law went into effect. So we had staff focusing on that stuff. It's going to be, we're going to spend a little more staff time doing it, but I don't see those costs being, exorbitant. And so, yeah, well, we're going to try and minimize them as much as possible. So the ongoing monitoring, we're already doing as agencies. We're going to increase that. We put in some monitoring wells. OID, I think it was 18 of those. Yeah, and that was through grant program. So we're going to try and get grants. The plan was actually drafted, and the costs for this plan are coming from a grant we received as well. So we're doing everything we can to keep those costs down. But the people that created the problem, you're right, should fix the problem, and that's definitely the focus right now.
Hey, I appreciate your answers. And again, I want to thank all three of you in the three districts that are involved. And I look at it that if there's income received, that's going to help your constituents and your customers. And if there's expenses, it should go to the people that caused the problem. One last question, then I'll get off, or I won't get off, but I'll shut up, is will this take a 218 process?
Not right now. We're not planning on assessing fees to everybody currently. I think if we were going to assess fees as an agency, then we would have to go through a 218 process. Right now, we're basically we're putting non-districtees on notice that they need to do projects. We're working with them on the side, together to try and fix the problem. And if that doesn't occur and our costs go up because we have to facilitate some sort of enforcement, allocation, all of the things that go along with that, that would be a bigger effort. And at that point, we might end up having to do some sort of 218 process. But right now, we haven't gotten that far into it, and so we don't know. Right now we have no plans to do a 218. There's no requirement for it for what we're doing. The approach we're taking.
No, just in the Turlock Subbasin, the problem is similar, probably not quite as extensive as what's happening in the Modesto Subbasin. So demand management for the East Turlock GSA is projected to be about 20 to 30% over time if their projects don't come in to improve recharge and improve conservation. So it's a slightly different situation. And I think Eric made the point that, to me, the thing with Sigma, when we adopt our plans next year, we're getting to the starting line, not the finish line, right? So what we're doing right now is agreeing to the rules of the game. We're marking out the field, all that stuff. And then over the next 20 years, we play the game and see where we end up with the result is. So again, all those things are conceptual right now. What's it going to take to be sustainable? We've got to be sustainable by 2042. And we will get there because we don't have a choice. But it's really hard right now, like with any plan, to know that what we do today is going to be the way we're going to win this game, or be successful over the next 20 years. So kind of stay tuned. I imagine a lot of adaptive management as things change. We'll adjust. We'll turn different dials and switch different levers. But we'll get there eventually. But as I think the point was made clear, there are areas outside of the irrigation districts that don't have access to surface water supply, where groundwater conditions are such that they have overdraft, and they're the ones who are primarily on the hook to fix this problem at their expense.
Well, understandably, we're in the water business. We've been managing, conjunctive use. We've been looking at groundwater, how we're using groundwater, how we're using surface water, putting that all together, trying to be more efficient, trying to make as cost effective as possible. They have not done that up to this point. So they're going to have to start. This is going to put them on the hook to do that. So we want to keep the state out of our business. We've shown that we can manage things locally better than having somebody from the state do it. So that's the goal right now. Every year we have this annual report that's required. So that'll be our way to gauge how well we are keeping up with what we planned on, where we thought we were going to be in the plan. So like Michael said, we're going to dial back or dial it up, depending on what happens from those annual reports. And 5 years from now, we will be back at the same place, drafting another plan, and that plan will be an update, and we'll be having all these same discussions. So, like you said, stay tuned. That's the best thing to do.
Okay, so is everybody basically done with their presentation? We really appreciate TID, OID, and MID being there. John and Bill, we appreciate your comments and questions participating in this, and we really appreciate everybody coming today. Thank you very much. Do we have any other business, Trish, to finalize before we leave?
Yeah, I'll just share. Our next meeting is November 19th. The speakers for that one will be Jason Conway, Executive Director of Modesto Gospel Mission, and Brad Hahn, Chairman of Stanislaus Homeless Alliance, and their topic focus is the role and function of quasi-government committees on homelessness funding.
Okay, great.
And outside of that, I also thank you for your time today and for all coming in and getting stuck by the train. Can't control that one, but
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you
yeah,
for the
happy to
support,
have you
too.
guys today. Thank you. And I wish everyone a really great weekend. Thank you.